Redditors who have died then been resuscitated. What do you remember seeing? I had a near-death experience in which I was ejected from an automobile. When I regained consciousness, a man came to me and said everyone survived. The man was there before any paramedics arrived. The craziest part of it all was that looking at that man gave me the most powerful sensation of deja vu ever. Maybe I hit my head too hard, but it was an insane experience. It was as if I have seen that man before. Once when I got a concussion I had rolling deja vu for about 2 hours. I attempted suicide a few years ago by hanging myself with an extension cord. I had no pulse when the police arrived, but nobody is really sure how long I was up there. I was resuscitated in the ambulance but was in a coma for a little under 2 weeks. Anyway, all I remember is a feeling similar to general anesthesia once I jumped off the table, but for the 5 seconds before it went black, I was in total panic and had a total change of heart from the confidence in my decision to end it seconds before. And then it was just nothing, like a deep sleep. And when I finally awoke from the coma, it was like finally reaching the surface of pool after diving too deep. I was in the same panic that I was immediately after I jumped from my table. Like I just blinked instead of being knocked out for 2 weeks. So to answer your question, I don't remember anything at all. It was like being in a deep, dreamless sleep. Perhaps if I regained consciousness immediately after being resuscitated, I'd remember something more interesting, but yay, nothing is about all I can offer. Glad you're back. All of these responses referring to nothingness, lack of consciousness, really has me questioning my life. If there really is nothing after death, and this is our one and only chance to experience, learn and grow, then I want my time here to really mean something. I want to have an impact on the world in some way, to help better it for others before my time is up. And then I realize that I've just spent 3 hours on Reddit. My former football coach had a heat attack on the field and was dead for 15 minutes. We were talking to him and someone finally asked what it was like to be dead. He replied with saying that he remembers a whole lot of nothing. He didn't have amnesia or anything, there was nothing around. He did say it was the most peaceful moment of his life. Going off this, I kinda think it's like Inception, where you build the world that you inhabit. Hung myself with my dog's leash almost a year ago. All I remember is letting go of the leash since I was holding onto it, and just hanging there for like a minute. It wasn't enough of a shock like stepping off a chair, so I was suffocating and time just seemed to slow down. I felt my heart beat in my arms and legs and I felt it start to fade. I remember what I've come to call the big empty in my therapy groups as just the plain nothingness. It's hard to describe and some people in this thread have managed it quite well, but my description would be a void. There's no darkness. There's no you. There's nothing. It's such a complete lack of anything at all that it can't even be described as empty, because that would imply it could be filled with something. It's hard to even realize that it exists because you can't even really perceive it. A near-death experience like mine, I think, is like peering at the void but not going in. Just enough life left to know it's there and not enough death to be engulfed and completely extinguished by it. My nosy neighbor apparently witnessed me through the window, broke said window and cut me down within 10 minutes. I was out for 3 days afterwards, but I have since fully recovered and finished my inpatient and outpatient program with the Youth Services Bureau and have completely turned my life around. The fear of the big empty still haunts me, knowing that I will have to face it again one day and lose. I'm glad you're still here. Nothing at all really. It's much like a deep sleep. I do remember the shock of being resuscitated. It's just like boom, you take the single most painful gasp of air as your eyes burn out from the halogen lights in the hospital. You look up and see a bunch of people in white hospital masks. You're manic and panting for air as the nurses and doctors hold you down to keep you from jumping up and ripping out the IV. They need to secure those IVs better because it seems they are ripped out in every story. Absolutely nothing. When I was 14 I had to undergo a MRI. They inject you with a radioactive iodine isotope to make it show up better. Apparently I am allergic to that. Just before they put me in the machine they said don't move. I replied hold on, my back itches. I'm told my back looked like a 3D topographic relief map of the Himalayas. That's when I stopped breathing. They immediately put some concentrated liquid Benadryl into my IV and I could feel it start to move around my body before I blacked out. I know I will die again someday. I truly hope I don't suffocate again. That is a very scary way to go. I was dead for almost 2 minutes according to the doctors. My mom was very freaked out. My aunt had an experience like this when she was 18. She always suffered of chronic seizures that made her pass out. One day, she had one while no was around. She was later found by my grandmother. The doctors luckily arrived in time to resuscitate her. She explained that she was in brightest, most peaceful hallway. She wandered aimlessly through it until she found a massive door closed on one end. She told me grandmother that she tried as hard as she could to open the door. Tapping, slamming, even kicking it would not allow the doors to break free. She looked back to see the back of the corridor gone, replaced with an emergency room. She was lying on stretcher while multiple nurses doctor were frantically working to revive her. She gave up on the door, turned around and led for the surgery room. She inevitably reached the room and re-entered her body. She passed away at the age of 42, about 9 months ago. Heart failure after multiple seizures. She left behind 2 young daughter and a husband. We like to think that the doors open for her. We like to think that the doors open for her. Feels. It was weird. I left my body and moved up through the ceiling in the ICU. I moved through some walls and then back down, under my body and re-entered myself from below. When I wasn't looking at anything in the hospital I could also see a large, dark black space with slivers of pulsing color that seemed to be on the edges of shapes. So I could see the hospital and also this dark world at the same time. Don't know if I was hallucinating or not. Still unclear if I was unconscious or dead. Doctor wasn't sure. I was around 7 at the time. I saw light. It got bigger. Then, I swear on my mother's grave, Ed and Eddie appear, and they start dancing, and music plays. It was weird as frick, but I swear to God that's what I remember. That theory where all the characters in Ed and Eddie are actually dead children in an afterlife comes to mind. Growing up, my father used to tell me of an experience he had while having open heart surgery. The doctors had to stop his heart for about 20 or 30 minutes while they inserted a mechanical valve into his heart. At the time, he was in his early 20s and was involved in a lot of bad activity that he says he is ashamed of now. Anyway, while my dad was dead he said he was in a very dark place and as he wandered around, he started running into very scary people who were deformed and screaming at him. He ran for his life into a corner and hid, and just before the people got to him, he looked up and saw his deceased grandmother reach her hand down and grab him. The next thing my dad remembered, he was back in the hospital. He's convinced he was temporarily in heck. I don't know if this was just a dream state or something, but I've never seen my dad so convinced in his life. It was enough for him to turn his life around and turn to religion and more importantly, come back to his family that he had left behind. Not me, but a friend of mine overdosed one day while doing some stuff with his friend. The friend hadn't done anything yet so he wasn't imagining all of the signs of death on this guy. No pulse, cold skin, blue lips. My friend told me that those few minutes he was considered dead he saw nothing but white. Everything around him was bright white and in the distance was a dark shadowed tree. He then saw a woman, also dark and shadowed, so he wasn't able to see her face. But her presence made him happy. She held out her hand to him and for a while he debated whether or not he should go with her. He decided not to and she simply walked away. Then he woke up again. Before that event he defined himself as Catholic but was never really religious. Afterwards he turned his life around and started devoting himself to helping others. TLDR. Death is female. When I was 12 I drowned in the Gulf of Mexico. I was out pretty far from my family and the current picked up into a rip. I had always been a very strong swimmer and I knew what to do. Swim parallel. On this occasion I wore myself out and started to sink beneath the water. I remember struggling to breathe. Then, I took a big breath of water and everything stopped. The only way I can describe it is by saying it was being at zero. I wasn't scared or excited. I was just zero. I was looking through the water and I blacked out. During that time, my mother was swimming out to me. She'd been a surfer all her life and pulled me to shore and gave me CPR until I coughed up water. There was something eerily comforting about being at zero. My friend went hiking with his family and he fell a few feet off a cliff they were climbing and he hit the back of his head on a rock. They called an ambulance and when they finally arrived to the hospital he was pronounced dead. He had no heartbeat or any brain waves. They were already unplugging everything and moving on with all the paperwork when he suddenly woke up. The nurse screamed he's awake and then chaos ensued all over again. He was dead for about 7 minutes and he says the entire time he was laying down fully conscious in a really dark room. He calls it a room but doesn't really know. He said he couldn't tell how long it was but that suddenly he heard a sound like if someone snapped their fingers next to his ear and then he woke up in the hospital. The experience didn't make him religious either. I saw a field with trees on both sides. I could see water. I felt like there was an ocean on one side of the path. If you can imagine the fields that electrical lines go through, where there is no residence and they just clear the area for the power lines. It was like that. There was a tree in the middle and a well-worn path around it. I was walking the path. It looked like an oak tree. It was very large, and presence came to walk with me. I told it that I was ill and that this seemed like a nice place. The entity, I'm non-religious so I don't know what it was, told me that I was not done and that I should return. That I would be happy one day. It was so peaceful, beautiful, but the forest seemed dark and scary. The trees on both sides seemed a place I did not want to go. I only wanted to go toward the water. Then I saw a bright light and I woke up in the ICU. I hope this doesn't turn into some kind of religious debate or some kind of medical versus spirituality thing. This was my experience. Take it as that. I wonder what the significance of the tree is. A few others have posted about seeing a tree as well, including my cousin. Could just be a coping mechanism, but still, interesting. My heart was stopped for a short time following a car accident. Woke up in the operating room then was in a coma for 2 weeks after that. I saw nothing. It was exactly like being asleep. The interesting bits are what you feel when dying. Your body is dumping all of its wonderful chemicals and time slows down from the adrenaline or whatever. I saw the truck hop the median. I saw the car spinning like a carnival ride, which felt like at least 30 seconds when in reality my car only turned less than one full turn. DMT is a heck of a drug, but the being dead part isn't interesting or any sort of a religious experience. Luckily you can't remember what pain feels like. In retrospect this experience is a lot more interesting than it was at the time. It's a lot like being high, in that your priorities are shifted really strangely while you're in it. I didn't care that I was fricked up so much as that they were cutting off my pants or that I had $10 and change in the ashtray that I didn't want whoever recovered my car to steal. P.S. Severe internal bleeding doesn't really hurt so much as makes you feel too warm and want to throw that fricking space blanket the ends put on you off. Can I speak for my godfather here? He went into heart surgery to have a triple bypass done and died on the operating table. Classic flat line, like you see in the movies. He told us that he went into the next life twice, and both times he was given the choice to either stay with the living, or come to heaven. Both times, he said I'll stay. Once he got back, whenever he told the story, he insisted that it was very real. It wasn't his brain dying. He really went somewhere. He lived for about 30 years after that. Very uplifting. I really like these types of stories instead of the big black void nothingness posts. I was 9 years old when I died due to meningitis, and I do remember one small thing from when I was dead. I remember that I was in a dream state kind of, but it felt more realistic I guess is the right word. And I was standing in a yellow room with no furniture, no windows, nothing. Straight ahead of me I watched as the walls spread apart and opened into a long hallway that seemed to go on forever. Kind of like the dragon from Dragon Ball Z and how the back of the dragon just seemed to be endless. And then I woke on the operating table and that was really it. Been waiting a long time to share this on Reddit. Thanks for sharing. My father-in-law was in the hospital and his heart stopped. He was dead but they revived him. Then he kept talking about a heart surgery. Finally, my wife said, "Dad, you didn't have heart surgery." He said, "Yes I did. I remember the big diamond encrusted scepter that was thrust into my heart to fix me. I don't know what it means." And he died a few days later so I can't get any more details. My sister was shot while she was walking her dogs in our small town in Alaska. The bullet ricocheted around, piercing her bowel in 9 places. Even though we had one of the best Rhodes Scholar docks in the north that hour and the only flight out of town was miraculously minutes away from takeoff and held up to fly her to Anchorage, she bled out and died on the operating room table. She knows because she vividly remembers everything the surgeons said as she lay dead on the table. What she told me later is remarkable. She recalls drifting up and into a very bright light. She was no longer in pain and felt compelled to travel into the brilliance. It led to an amazing river. Seriously, the look on her face when she describes this place helps me realize that radiant, endless joy is not just a possibility but an eventuality. She describes playing in a river that consisted of pure knowledge. Anything she ever wanted to know was at her fingertips. As she played in this amazing river, she could sense figures on the distant shore. They were our people, she explained. Our family, our animals, all waiting patiently for her to finish playing in the river and wade towards them on the shore. Though she was not ready to leave the marvelous river, she knew without being told that they would wait patiently and joyfully. But she never made it to the shore. As she was playing, an amazing thing happened. Seriously, people, if you could see the look on her face when she describes this next part, you would laugh for pure joy. A being approached her. She did not know what it was except to describe it as pure, unconditional, ebullient love. It radiated love. It pulsed love. And all things diminished before the radiance of that love. The next part makes me chuckle a bit, even though that seems out of place. She said it spoke to her and said that she had to go back, that it wasn't her time. She said, like a little kid, but I don't want to. When she recounts this experience, she emphasizes that to be in proximity of that being is all there is. She describes it as a completion, a peace, a welcoming. To leave was incomprehensible, but to decline was also incomprehensible. She felt infused with a purpose. Very, very, very reluctantly she returned to life. She is amazing. They patched her femoral artery and explained that the graft would eventually give. In all probability she will die within minutes. Living with that sword of Damocles should be terrifying. To her it's a promise that she will get to return. Life is what we are here to do, she explains. But after, sweet, benevolent, all-encompassing love. With every single breath my sister is heartbeats from death. And I have never met anyone who is more alive, fearless. This is the only story that hasn't scared the freaking crap out of me in this entire thread. Thank you for this. I OD'd on some sleeping pills when I was young and stupid and heartbroken. I hadn't thought much about the consequences of what would happen afterwards, except I wouldn't feel this overwhelming pain anymore. The shock of the absolute nothingness I experienced for a few moments brought me enough strength to crawl back to town and get taken to the hospital. The 5 or so minute ride to the hospital was me fighting it with everything I had, and every time I slipped over, the horribleness of it made me fight just a little harder. I was too exhausted to fight it once I got to the hospital. A preacher read me my last rites and I was out. Luckily I woke up a couple days later. I've been worse off emotionally a few times since then, but suicide never crosses my mind. There are no emotional troubles that are as awful as that sliver of nothingness I felt. My life is great now and I'm so thankful I'm alive. I've experienced so many great things since then. I can't believe I ever thought I had nothing to live for. When I was coming to, which took a couple days, I hallucinated my best friend trying to get me into trouble by making me get out of bed, and seeing a little mouse in the corner of the room which I kept trying to capture. My friend is still alive and I don't have a special connection to mice. It felt very real, but obviously I was hallucinating. I can see how someone might hallucinate about things like deceased relatives, and mistake their visions for something more than a brain malfunction. So as far as changing my views on religion, I was fairly skeptical beforehand, but deep down hoped angels would whisk me away. Afterwards I'm pretty sure this life on earth is all we got. TLDR, nothing, a darkness beyond black, complete and utter nothing. My life is great now and I'm so thankful I'm alive. I've experienced so many great things since then. I can't believe I ever thought I had nothing to live for. I'm really happy for you, although at the same time this also makes me so sad for those who commit suicide and have the feeling of wait, I don't want to die but it's too late. If you're looking for a more religious viewpoint, I'd like to be on the other side of some of the comments here and say that, if a higher power did have a plan for you, and you were meant to die as part of your life experience, then that same power could simply decide that you aren't meant to see what's beyond the veil of mortality just yet, and that could explain why many saw nothing, as they weren't meant to. I guess that goes against the standard Reddit there is no god ideal that pretty well makes up the hive mind around here, but I like to keep an open mind and accept possibilities even in the face of overwhelmingly contradictory evidence. I don't claim to have any of the answers you're looking for, or to know anything about the afterlife with any certainty, as I don't directly associate myself with any one religious group in particular. Instead choosing to accept that I do not know and ponder the infinite possibilities, none of which can be said to be the one true answer. Could there be no God? Yes. There may not be. Could there be one? Is it possible? Yes. It certainly is, but no one can say with any true certainty until they've died. For good. That is, that any answer is the right answer. Anyone that claims to have those answers cannot comprehend the immensity of what they don't know. Thanks, that was refreshing. Posted before but I died. I put that in quotes because that's what I was told, briefly, and was brought back. Afterwards I was put in a medically induced coma for 12 days. The entire time I didn't see anything, didn't float above my body, etc. The only visions I had was when my nurse messed up my orders when taking me out of the coma, and I ended up going through withdrawals and hallucinating for about 3 days straight. As far as I remember it was just nothing. Now the hallucinations on the other hand were far worse than the coma, the accident, or any other surrounding events. Those were the most genuine things I have ever experienced, but not 1 second of it was real. My uncle once died in the middle of open heart surgery, after he said that he remembered being on a steampunk style military ship. My mom's root canal got infected and she died for 5 minutes. She said she saw a river or a darkness like a river, and on the other side was just others. She didn't describe what they looked like, but she knew it was others like her somehow. Then from behind someone touched her shoulder and said it's not time yet. Then she woke up and would not stop asking who just touched her shoulder. The doctors were all confused and kept saying no one touched your shoulder. You were just dead. She became born again Christian after that and is a firm believer in Christ. For some perspective, I am full-blown atheist. I believe that what she told me is what she truly believes, but I can't say I believe that what she perceived as an afterlife. The mind sends out all types of chemicals when you're in a situation like that, and it could have been any number of things. But she definitely thinks it was some version of the Christian afterlife. So this will almost certainly be buried, but I almost died by drowning when I was 9. I remember a vision of an old growth forest and I can still picture it in my mind and just how green it was. A man came and spoke to one of my classes this semester about his near-death experience, and it gave me great comfort, so I wanted to share it here. He was kayaking with a friend and ended up flipping his and being sucked under by the current. He was sucked into a pipe underwater and struggled to get out, almost made it, and was sucked back in. He passed out and his friend saw his lifeless body being tossed down the river. This is how he described his experience in the moments he was unconscious. He was in a dark place, almost like a cave, only the walls were soft and velvety. At the end of this cave was a beautiful kaleidoscope of colors. He made it sound similar to a stained glass window. And on the other side of this colored glass dark figures were passing by. He said that all sense of time was lost and it felt like his wife and kids would come join him at any minute. He said it was the most comforting and peaceful feeling he has ever experienced. He said that he had the strong sense that God wanted him and everyone there so badly, and that you must have to do something pretty terrible to go to heck because he wasn't the greatest of guys before this. His friend was able to catch up to his body and revive him, and he said now he feels a stronger connection with everyone and is grateful to have had this experience. Hope this was calming to some of you like it was to me. Some of the posts on here are pretty scary. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.